Welcome back to Overtime Heroics. I'm Mason Shatwell, and again joining me today is the world champion of Cage Warriors in the middleweight division, Matt Bonner. Tap, before I ask you how are you, how does that sound?
Sounds pretty good. Thanks for having me on again, bud.
No worries. It's a pleasure to speak to you. How are you anyway, mate?
Good. Yeah, no kind of injuries or anything. I don't know if you can see I've got a little bit of a black eye and a few bruises, but no broken bones or anything. So, yeah, I'm good.
I'm sure you'll take plenty of black eyes to be called world champ.
Well, yeah, every time I go into a fight, you always kind of expect you're going to come out with some kind of broken bone. I think the last 3 fights I broke my hand. It was Martin and James Webb and George Smith. So to come out and have a few little bruises, and then obviously being a world champion on top of that is a big bonus.
Before I get onto your fight specifically, it was quite a successful trilogy for Next Gen, obviously, with yourself, Liam, Nathan, all picking up wins. Again, how does it feel to be part of one of the best gyms in not just the UK, Europe now?
It feels good. It's obviously very satisfying because it isn't just about me, it's about the team now. And that was one of the best things about going to Next Gen was it's a team environment. And I kind of said before in a few other podcasts and whatnot that, everybody in Next Gen, everybody who's in the professional team in the morning wants to get to the UFC. No one just wants to fight on the domestic scene. No one's kind of just happy with that. Everybody wants to get to the UFC, and it pushes us all on with that, extra competitiveness as well.
I've seen on social media you've been enjoying the win with the tour, the book, everything. I'm sure you've been enjoying this time as the new champ.
Yeah, obviously I'm only joking when it comes to that sort of stuff, but it's nice to kind of bring out a little bit of personality and stuff, and it has gone across quite nicely. And if that gets me a few more follows and a bit more kind of media attention and stuff, then again, that's another bonus on top of winning the belt.
I don't know if you've seen, but I've seen Cage Warriors posted before Natias's interview that he did with Sky Sports, and I watched it just before coming on. And what were your thoughts on Natias as a person, not just an opponent? Because obviously, after watching the interview he did with Sky Sports, I've got a newfound level of respect for the man as well.
It's a funny one with Natias because he's kind of very vulnerable at times. They mentioned his mum and he started getting very emotional and stuff, but then on the other side, he'll kind of say the referee is going to have to drag me off Matt Bonner. So you've got to be very careful. You can't really show anyone any empathy. You can't kind of go in there with the idea of he's obviously a very brave guy and he's gone through a lot. But at the end of the day, I have to be there to win the fight. I can't get drawn into that kind of emotional side. Especially, I don't know much about I know Frederick struggles with autism and stuff like that, but his emotions are always seem very extreme. So he's getting very emotional about his mum, but then at the same time, when he's in the cage, he has had to be dragged off, and he gets very angry and very aggressive. So that was in the back of my mind. I can't get drawn into that. I have to be careful that this guy is going in there to do me some real damage.
Yeah, 100%. And there's 2 points that I wanted to 100% get your opinion about that happened over the trilogy. The weigh-in, obviously. Was you expecting Natias not to shake your hand, or did that come as a surprise?
I figured he would shake it at the weigh-in. I didn't think he'd shake it before the fight because obviously for the main event they bring you both together. The referee says his piece, and then you go back to your corner. So I wasn't expecting him to shake my hand then or fist bump or whatever. But I expected a little bit of a handshake at the weigh-in. It was strange because we weighed in on the Wednesday. And I went downstairs the hotel on the Wednesday morning because they have the official scale in the office there. So it's always a good idea to kind of check your weight on the official scale. And I knocked on the office door, and it just happened that Frederick opened the door. It was him and his team who was in there at the time. And he was actually quite polite, and his team were very polite. And then the weigh-in was probably about 2 hours after that, and he refused to shake the hand. So and that was the reason why I actually went to shake his hand, because he'd been quite respectful 2 hours before. So I thought that was a little bit odd. Whether that was for the cameras or whatever, I have no idea. But I was surprised at the weigh-in.
And then again after the fight, obviously, when you won and the referee was obviously declaring you as the winner, obviously, what was Natias saying during that to the referee? Because I seen on the cameras that he was protesting something, but I didn't quite make out what.
I'm not sure. Again, I'm really not sure. Obviously, he's not going to be happy because he's lost his belt, and that would mean a lot to anyone. But yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what he was saying as well. Rich Mitchell was kind of standing there, nodding his head, kind of shooing anything off what Frederick was saying to him. But yeah, I have no idea. Natty's has got kind of a very strange issue with the officials. He's had quite a lot of controversy with Matt Goddard prior to that as well. So I have no idea. I'd be interested myself in finding that out.
There's a couple of moments in the fight I wanted to ask you about. One, the first one was going to be the illegal knee that he threw, I think, in the second round. Did that affect you at all? Because I seen obviously you jumped straight back up after it.
It didn't make like a massive contact or anything like that. It was more from my side that he had the audacity to throw it. I mean, Frederick's been a champion now for a while. He's obviously, I think he's like 11, 12 fights into his career. He absolutely knew that knee was going to be illegal. There's no kind of, well, he must have known, or he should know. So it was less so that was damaged and more so that I couldn't believe he'd actually tried it. The doctor came in afterwards and stuff, and he was asking if I was okay, and I was never going to say no. I was fine. It barely made any contact, but I still think it's the right thing to do to penalise people for that. Or if he'd have landed that knee, that could have been the fight over.
Do you think it was thrown with any ill intent?
I think he threw it to land it. Yeah, I really do. And in fact, if you look in I think it's the fourth round, he looks like he's just
almost hit it again.
So I mean, again, this goes back to what I was saying before. Natchez, the referee. If you look in his prior fights before Cage Warriors, the referees had to drag Natchez off, and Natchez is still trying to punch the guy as he's being dragged off. One of the referees ends up getting him in a rear naked choke just to stop him. This isn't a guy who's going in there and he's just looking to win the fight. He's going in there and he wants to win the fight by any means possible. If that means doing it by a legal knee or whatever, or by holding the glove or by punching in the back of the head, he doesn't care. He couldn't care less.
Whether that knee landed or not, I'm sure you was going to do whatever you could to have continued either way.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the referee did say, "Do you want the doctor in?" And I said no. And then he said, I think they have to get the doctor in. I think it's part of a new policy. They have to bring the doctor in. But yeah, I was fine. And even if that had landed and done some damage, I'd have probably just took the point and cracked on.
I remember when we spoke after your fight with James, and you said obviously this was the fight to make, and it has been. And you saying that you can tell in the fight hits hard, but how hard does he actually hit?
It was the leg kicks that was surprised by. He hit me like an inside low kick. I think it was the first strike he threw in the fight, and that kind of lifted me off the ground. I'd never kind of experienced. It's not that he hit hard. It's just like it was a different kind of power. I've got a twin brother who's very very world ranked in Thai boxing. He kicks like a truck, but it was a different feeling. It was, if you compare it to my brother, it's like a nice slap or a snap of a shot, where Frederick was like getting hit by a sledgehammer. It was like a very blunt force shot. In terms of the strikes, there was nothing really there that kind of got through that much by this kind of little shiner I've got here. There was never a point in the fight where I was wobbled or kind of took too much damage. I think I was fortunate enough that most of it kind of deflected off my forearms and my hands for the most part.
Well, I think it was your post-fight interview with Edith LaBelle, and I remember you saying that you wasn't hurt that much in the fight. It was mainly fatigue during it, but it looked from our perspective watching the fight on TV and that it looked like it could have been finished towards the end of the third, fourth round, depending how the referee was seeing it. But was that just due to the fatigue?
It was, but I kind of agree with what you're saying. Me looking back on it, it does look like that. What the referees do say before the fight is they say, "I will clearly give you like a couple of warnings. I'll say your name. I'll say, Matt, you need to move. Matt, you need to get out of this position if they're gonna stop it." And Rich Mitchell didn't say that, so he wasn't close to stopping it. But it does look a lot more violent on the camera than I think it. I think it looks worse than what it was. Again, if you actually look at the contact of where the gloves are hit, there's not really any which are kind of getting through. It's very much slapping off the hand and the forearms. But I can certainly understand the kind of what you're saying in terms of it looks like he's kind of nudging towards a finish.
Well, I rewatched the fight about an hour ago just before speaking to you, and I agree with what you're saying. He was throwing a lot of strikes, but didn't see that that a lot of them was landing. It was more wild. And going back to our previous interview after the James fight, it was our point, like you were saying, that he throws a lot of wild strikes, and that's where technically he's not as well rounded as say yourself, where you'll throw the strikes and 90% will land.
Sure.
Frederick 50 if that were landing.
That's right. He fought exactly how I figured he would fight. There was no, because fighters will have 3 months off between fights sometimes, and sometimes that's enough of a time for them to come in with new weapons and new options and stuff. He fought exactly how I figured he would fight. There was no kind of real, oh my God, he's brought a different kind of dimension to his game, or they figured out this really good game plan or anything. I knew he was going to be wild. I knew he was going to kick hard. I was still surprised a little bit about the kicking, but I also knew that if I was to take him down, that I could control him on the ground.
Have you watched the fight back since?
Yeah, I've watched it a few times.
With the finish, what do you make of it after watching it back? Because I remember on our works group chat we was talking about it, and it seemed like at the end the fires just looked like he stopped for a moment where he was able to capitalise on that. What was, looking back at it, what do you make of that, and what did you think during the fight?
I was talking to a friend about this yesterday, and he came up with like a really good point. He said that obviously I was leading the points up to that point, and obviously deducted points. I was possibly leading it by 4 points. So if you'd scored the first 3 rounds to me, and then you figure that the first round was a 10-8 round, I'm up by 4 points. So what he suggested is that maybe this kind of big surge in the 4th round from Frederick was that they had to get a finish. So he used everything. He put absolutely everything into that kind of 4th round. And then when I did move, he kind of fell forward. So he might have just been absolutely exhausted up at that point. I mean, I was tired. You can clearly see I'm fatigued, but it was the end of the 4th round. He must have been feeling that fatigue. And that's why I think he's kind of very much slowed down when I've managed to get out of that sprawl position. I've been able to maneuver around the back, and then I've sank in that choke. And I know the hooks weren't in. I've not been able to put the feet in, for anybody who doesn't know what the hooks are, but you put the hooks in and then you go for under the neck traditionally. I couldn't get the hooks in, but the short choke that I had on when I got the forearm on was very tight straight away. So I think he's fell back almost to take that pressure off, which is obviously, the worst thing that you can possibly do. But I think the fatigue has crept in from Frederick at that moment, and he's just fell forward and been too exhausted to defend anything.
I think with the fight, obviously, after watching it back again, I scored the first 2 rounds to you either way. Obviously, the second round was a 10-8. Yeah. And watching it live, I think I scored the 3rd round to Frederick, but rewatching it after the onslaught from Frederick and then you got the top position, I think I was edging it more towards you after rewatching it. So even if the judges gave the 3rd round to Fredericks, you were still ahead on the scorecards, or it might have been. Yeah, I think you was still ahead because obviously the 10-8 round as well. So was you aware of that you was ahead on points going into the 4th?
I was, but I was also aware of that I was really fatigued, and that Frederick could have possibly scored a 10-8 in that 4th round or going into the 5th round. So that I was kind of dubious about that, which was, obviously why I'm really satisfied that I was able to finish off in the 4th. It'd be very interesting going into that 5th round. What would have happened? I'm not sure. I was very fatigued, whether it was because it was the first kind of 5-round fight or whether it was the nerves of fighting for a world title. I was tired, and there was often an awful lot of wrestling in there as well. So obviously that takes its toll. But maybe he would have come in the 5th and he would have been exhausted. I'm really not sure. Again, that's why it's nice to put that stamp on it and have the fight finished by the rear naked choke or by the short choke.
Yeah, we can all if buts and wonder what would have happened, but you got the win, and there's no doubt about it. You're now the champion. Do you think being at Next Gen gave you the biggest advantage in that fight? Obviously, Next Gen's got a big grappling pedigree.
Sure. I mean, there was 4 of us who won by kind of the rear naked choke or the short choke. That is something that we draw an awful lot. I think the UFC Performance Institute released like a load of information a while back, and I think they said like the rear naked choke was in percentage wise was 46% of the time. In terms of the submissions, that's how it was broke down. The rear naked choke was 46% successful out of all the submissions, where a submission from guard or a submission from mount would, in comparison, be like 1 to 2%. So obviously, you want to put kind of your time and your effort into the thing that's the most high percentage, which is that kind of back take rear naked choke. That's something for kind of the eight to 10 weeks possibly that we've been working on his rear naked chokes and whatnot, and also done quite a lot of arm triangles, which was trying my best to kind of apply to the fight. But to be fair to Frederick, he was quite good at defending them. But like you've mentioned, next gen come from this, a very much fundamental grappling gym, and that paid dividends for me coming into this fight.
How strong was Fredericks on the ground when you was on top?
I was surprised how strong he wasn't. I'd watched a lot of the James Webb fights, and he was just throwing James Webb off, where he never really threw me off. It was more kind of, I'd go back to half guard, or I'd kind of switch between mount and a back take. There wasn't that big explosive strength that I was anticipating, but I think you have to bear in mind that it was maybe because I was doing quite a lot of things right. I was engaging my hips, I was throwing strikes, I was pinning him down. It wasn't that Frederick wasn't, really, really strong. It might be because fundamentally I was doing the correct techniques, but he did sweep me with the Kimura sweep at one point. So the strength is there, but in terms of me wrestling and picking him up with the body lock and stuff, there wasn't really much of a problem from my side. I felt very comfortable on the ground, less so on the feet, which is why I was, prolifically through the fight was trying to take him down.
What went through your mind after you got the submission against Frederick? What was your first feeling?
Honestly, I was just pleased that it was over with. I remember walking away, and you've got Chris Lamb, who's the doctor, rushes up, because obviously, like you say, it looked more violent than it was. And I said, listen, I'm okay. I've just got to sit down. And then you see me just kind of slump against the cage. And then it was just like, I know it's a kind of a boring answer, but it was just like a relief. Like, relief that it's over, relief that this kind of, I've almost got this happy ending of winning the world title after this kind of big resurgence in my career. That was like the predominant feeling, was thank God this has worked out for me.
How was your weight cut for this fight?
The weight cut was super easy. The weight cut's never been an issue since I've moved up from welterweight. So I'll generally walk around at kind of like 92, 93 kilo, and then to drop down to 84. I had to kind of, for anyone who again doesn't know, if it's a non-title fight, you get a pound allowance or a half a kilo allowance. If it is a title fight, you don't get any allowance. So I had to factor that into the weight cut, that kind of extra half kilo. But honestly, it was super easy. I probably could have weighed in on Tuesday morning. We weighed in on the Wednesday morning for this show because it was a Thursday show. But yeah, the weight cut was super easy. As soon as I get into the hotel, the weight cut is over. There's no kind of sauna or salt bath or any kind of wrapping up. By the time I get to the hotel, I'm kind of 85 kilo, and then the rest will come off by itself over the course of the night.
When the fight was over and you got home, or when you was at the hotel, what was the first thing you enjoyed?
In terms of food, God, I can't. I think I had a bottle of Corona. I think that might have been the first thing I drunk, and I don't even really drink beer, but someone ended up throwing me this bottle of Corona, and I had to drink that. I think I had, right after the fight, I had like a Monster Energy drink, because after the fight, your mouth dries out so terribly. You end up talking to Edith, and you can hardly get your bloody words out. So I think the first thing afterwards was I smashed this Monster Energy drink, and then when I got home, there was loads of like chocolate and stuff and cakes and all the rest of it. I've like an absolute pig, to be fair.
You've earned it. There's no doubt that you shouldn't be doing all this. How long do you usually take off from the gym after each fight?
So I'll have the week off now. So what we're on Tuesday now. Yeah, I'll have the week off. I'll be back in on Monday. I'm going back to work today, so I'm going to be kind of doing one-to-ones and stuff on the pads, but nothing too strenuous. I'll have a whole week off, and then we'll get back to it on Monday and start again.
I wanted to know, because I know the UFC is a bit different with their belts. With the Cage Warriors, do you get to take the belt home and all that stuff?
So yeah, you do. I've got it here on the bed, ready for you. So there you go. There's the belt. So the script is with the belt is, yeah, you do get to take it home, but to actually keep the damn thing, you have to defend it 3 times, and then you get to keep it permanently. Because apparently these things are worth about £1,000. I think someone was saying. Quite expensive expensive to make. It weighs honestly about 10-15 kilo. It's super heavy. So yeah, if I defend it 3 times, I get to keep it. Most of the time, if you move to the UFC, you still have to give it back to him. So it'd be a shame to see it go. But if it went because I got signed to the UFC, then obviously I'll be absolutely over the moon.
What are you expecting to be next for yourself? Because obviously you've mentioned UFC. That could be a calling call, but I've got a feeling that they might want to see you defend the belt just to see how you are in other situations. Obviously, Kent is a contender that looks like he could be next for the title, but has there been any talks about a potential rematch with Fredericks?
Not officially. I've had a few people mention it, and I know I think Fabian Edwards put up on his Instagram or put up on the Cage Warriors post that it should say there should be a rematch. I'd be open to a rematch if that's what the kind of Cage Warriors wanted. That would be something that I would be interested in. Like you say, this Kent Cotman. I actually think they should match up Frederick and Cotman. I think that would be an interesting fight. There's also the prospect of maybe Ian Gary moving up to middleweight if he doesn't get signed because he wants to be a double champion. Again, that would be a fight I'd be very interested in. So there's a good few fights there, to be fair, but I've kind of made a career out of not turning anyone down, and I can't see any reason why I would turn down any of those guys. So if whoever wants it, they can come and have a go, to be fair.
I've seen you posted on your Facebook, I think it was either yesterday or the day before. 2 years ago, you had a losing record, and now you're world champ. So I'm sure that feels a hell of a lot better.
It does, and any advice I would say to anyone else who's kind of in the same position is just make sure you're making changes to your training or addressing mistakes you've made. It's okay to lose. It's okay to make mistakes. What's not okay is for you to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. Obviously, my big decision was to move to next gen, and that's been possibly the best decision I've ever made in my life. So that's the only thing I would say to these people is losing in MMA isn't the same as maybe losing in boxing or anything like that. But what you do want to be doing is kind of, figuring out why you are losing and make some changes to your training.
100%. I just want to ask a couple about your teammates before I let you go, obviously. Nathan Fletcher getting the win. Do you see the title shot being next for Nathan?
I can't see anything but the title shot. I did actually learn yesterday on another podcast. I didn't know this at all, that Jack Cartwright's fought out of his Cage Warriors contract. So he's not actually contracted by Cage Warriors currently. And that's obviously the title holder of Nathan's division. So who they'll put him against, I'm not sure. Maybe Jack Cartwright will re-sign, or maybe he's on his way to the UFC or something else. I haven't got a clue, but in terms of Nathan, I can't see anyone. I just think he looked unbelievable in that fight, to be honest. I couldn't believe it. And people say, why can't you believe it? It's only a rear naked choke. But what you have to understand is that all Nathan's opponents are doing during their fight camp is defending rear naked chokes. They know he's going to get him in a rear naked choke. So all they're doing is defending it. And he still manages to get the damn thing in. So that just shows how good Nathan is and how talented he is in the grappling in MMA. I don't see anyone beating Nathan at any level. I really do think he'll go all the way in the UFC.
Yeah, I speak to Nathan quite a lot through these interviews and Instagram as well. And I remember he was saying to me a couple of months ago before his fight with Boland got announced that he wanted Boland as well, which I thought was a pretty bold move because I'm sure Boland obviously knocked out Liam in his last fight. And after as impressive as when it was for Boland, I didn't know if Nathan would want to get straight in there with him, but stop.
I think Nathan.
Isn't he?
I think Nathan is very kind of confident in what he's capable of. He does quite a lot of. I don't know if you've seen on Instagram. He's got like a calendar which will cross off, and he's got like little inspirational quotes at the end. So, I think he knows he's hitting all the marks in training. He's also kind of very clued up on the mental side as well. So, and obviously he's had 6 fights now, 6 finishes. So he's just going in more and more confident. It's almost like a snowball effect for him. Every fight he goes into, he's more confident, and that'll carry him through to winning the world title, I'm sure.
I know we spoke a minute ago about potential matchups for yourself next, but is there anyone that you want next?
The kind of Ian Gary thing, that kind of excites me a little bit because of how much attention he'd bring to the fight. I was kind of watching the Jack Grant and Ian Gary fight, and I thought it was a good fight, but I was kind of cringing all the way through the damn thing. I respect you. Well, I respect you as well. And it's like, oh, fuck's sake, just have a fight, will you? Shake hands before and shake hands afterwards. But I thought Ian Gary looked very vulnerable in that fight. I think he's obviously had quite a lot of problems with his team. He's left KF. He said he'd injured his knee before the fight as well. So, I mean, that would be a fight that would interest me. But obviously, I'll do as I'm told by Cage Warriors and crack on with it, whoever they decide they want to give me.
Just a couple more now. Is there any shout-out sponsors that you want to sign off with?
I'll say thanks to all my sponsors. That's Four Seasons Kitchen, Essence of Nature, Feel Supreme, Performance Box, Pitbull Fightwear, and Summer Vision. And I'll just say thanks for yourself for having me on, and thanks to Next Generation for all their help during camp.
Well, I'm always enjoying speaking to you, Matt. Where can everyone find you on social media?
So Facebook and Twitter, just search for Matthew Bonner, and Instagram, search for Matt the Beast Bonner.
Matt, it's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed again speaking to you. And again, congrats on becoming the new champ.
Thank you, buddy. I've loved it. Thanks very much. See you soon, Mason.
Thanks, Matt.
See you soon, mate.